Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Rundown with me, Fiona Fox. I have David Semple and Irina Gorianova helping with the stories today. Now, before the break, we were just reacting to today's story that there have been over 27,000 arrests in relation to illegal immigration over the last 3 years. We're agreed that you were both agreed that the government are failing in this.
It's the government that's failing.
It's the government that's failing.
You can't even blame the immigrants because they try and get in. It's the government.
What do we need to do? What do we need to do, though? I feel like it's obviously the same story we have to rehash over and over.
The border. It's just a question of the border. People fly in. They fly in legally. They'd have to have a passport or a visa to get in.
Very strict.
And then it's this French border thing where people are hiding on trucks. There's a way of checking that. And they're not doing their job. I don't think many people come across on boats across the channel.
But have you seen that? I think Daily Mail showed that clip as well. French fisherman or English fisherman was bringing a few people from France.
Well, we can check that. You could have drones.
Well, I was going to say, literally, what steps do they need to take, though? Because obviously, we can't closing our borders is an option, I suppose, per se.
Every country.
But how do we? Obviously, we're still dealing with people of the world. We're still dealing with EU members. Well, not EU members, sorry, but people who are close to home. How do we help deal with these situations? Or how do we help their problems?
The main way how they come into UK on those trucks through the channel tunnel. So there should be something before the channel tunnel. Obviously, French not doing it. The English government has to do something.
But actually, the French government they'll allow that camp at Calais, but under international law, those people are supposed to ask for asylum in France. You can't choose your country. Under the UN Convention, you go to a country, the country you land in, you ask for asylum. That's the way it works. It hasn't changed since 1951. And what they do is they hop around, and then the French are very clever. They go, hello, you don't want France, you want England, much better black economy there. And they go over to England. So the French aren't actually cooperating because they should be giving those people asylum in France.
I mean, there are an element of asylum seekers obviously settling in France, maybe not all of them. Do you feel they should be stopped, they should be held there?
You're supposed under
your first point.
The first point of arrival. That's where you ask for asylum. You're not allowed any other choice unless they change that UN convention. That's the way it should be, and we should enforce those existing laws. But I've known people who came here illegally who actually became legal immigrants, and as long as the numbers are small, we can deal with it.
Integrate.
I mean, when we have a problem when people commit crimes, yes, we should send them back to where they came from. But there are many people, they get smuggled in by gangs. I've had people who worked for me pay £20,000-30,000 to come from countries like Iran, Sri Lanka, and others to be smuggled in here, right, in trucks and that sort of thing. And they were working for me, 10, 15 years ago. And I have friends here in Manchester who came in that way too, illegally. And obviously each case has to be
individually assessed.
They should be interviewed separately, the same way the people at Heathrow are. That's the most we can do when we catch them.
Obviously this was a very hot and divisive topic in the run-up to the referendum as well. So how do you kind of envision, for example, as specifically talking about this story, would you imagine that this is going to be solved going forward, assuming we do exit the EU? Do you reckon that that's going to be an answer to this problem?
Personally not.
You don't think so?
I can't see it. This camp in Carlisle now grown to 10,000, I think the last figure was.
Yeah, but again, that's France's problem.
Yeah, but they are now border.
I know.
Yeah, and France is now talking like asylum. Yeah, they should claim English asylum when they're there.
Well, they have to land in England.
Yeah.
They have to come direct to England by plane.
Is that an attitude, though, just your comment there, is that an attitude that's going to fly, so to speak?
Well, it's international law.
Well, how are right going to be between the UK if they do take the attitude that, we're not in the EU anymore, that's not our problem anymore? Well, how are our relations going to be with Europe going forward?
Even if we were in the EU, that what they were doing at Calais is wrong. When we're in the EU, being outside the EU, the relationship won't change. France has to sort its own problem out. If they come to England, then we have to sort the problems out. But for the ones who are already in France, France encourages it. They do that purposely, and I know why people come here, because, again, of failings of British governments. Everything's down to how government doesn't work in this country, whether Labour, Conservative or anything. We have a huge black economy where people can come here and work at car washes, cash in hand, and they don't even need to be. They don't pay taxes, but they don't earn enough to pay taxes. They're not. Nobody even knows they're in the country. It's because our own tax system and black economy is huge compared to the French officials said that. So that's something we have to look at here.
Asylum system, I think, needs to be changed as well, because they come in here for something. There are circumstances which they're looking for. So if there will be no circumstances and basically the base for them, they wouldn't come because they wouldn't get what they're looking for.
And how do you feel? Do you feel Theresa May would you feel confident that she might be able to implement some change in this area?
Looking at her track record, no.
You would say no?
Because it's all talk and no action. Look, I'm not a hardliner. I'm an immigrant myself. And most of my friends in this city are immigrants. And most of my friends in London were immigrants.
The three of us
legal
immigrants.
Or illegal. Yeah, Ireland and England, they're almost like, you know, that's a close connection. Since 1922, you could go to both countries. Of course, sure, have an arrangement, which is a fantastic arrangement. But I do think that I'm not against people coming here at all, but we need to put some efficiency into it, and we have no efficiency. I believe the Home Office has been poorly run for a few decades, and of course it's going to get worse, because once Erdogan doesn't get what he wants, which is visa-free travel for Turks across Europe, and he's not going to get that with everybody's rights suspended, he's going to open up the Syrian border, and he's going to open up the border to Greece, and hundreds of thousands of people, they're already pouring into Greece every day, are going to pour into Greece and pour into Europe. So the problem with migrants and people wanting to get into Europe is going to get worse and worse, thanks to Turkey, and thanks to our overthrowing Gaddafi, and thanks to the Syrian civil war, which we haven't solved in our ways of solving it without sending troops in. So there's a lot of problems there. The pressure is going to get harder. Now, if Europe takes them in the EU, they have a problem in the Schengen because they all share, and we're not part of that Schengen, even if we were staying in the EU, because we're not part of that. We don't have to take anybody from Europe unless they have a European passport. That's the way in other words, if somebody lives in Holland, they have to move to England, they have to have a Dutch passport, citizenship, because we're not in the Schengen area. Europe is treating itself as one country. So it's going to get worse. And I believe that all the problem, I don't blame the migrants or the immigrants at all. I might be trying to do the same thing. I blame the British governments, who are completely inefficient. All the money we put into the British government, and they can't seem to do anything right. I hate to say this, and our MP should be trying to get this solved.
Yeah, and you don't see that happen anytime soon, do you know?
Lots of talk.
Lots of talk.
Yeah, no action.
Thanks very much for that, guys. Let's go to our last subject of the day, believe it or not. Presenter Jeremy Vine was subject to verbal abuse while cycling home from work. Video footage posted on social media by the presenter shows a woman shouting at him from behind the wheel of her car. When he stops to clear the air with her, she reacts furiously by getting out of her car and giving him a kicking, according to Mr. Vine. The pair return to their vehicles before the woman confronts him for a second time when they are stopped at traffic lights. Oh, this is going into the drivers versus cyclists ongoing debate, isn't it? Do you think that our cyclists, are they endangered on the streets? Are they being treated as second-class citizens, would you say, insofar as traffic?
Obviously they're vulnerable, yeah, but when I see cyclists behind my car, I feel vulnerable as well, because
Irina, are you one of those? Do you have
yes, I am. So I'm very careful around them. And
what are your issues with them? Do you think? I won't put words in your mouth. What are your issues with them?
It's not an issue thing. It's just sometimes they are abusing the road, you know, and you need to be aware that they cross the traffic light, red lights, they break them. Yeah. They don't wait, no queues, and just sometimes they're actually aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people like cyclists kicking cars as well.
Yeah. I think we've all seen both sides. I think I've been in a black cab and seen, you know, the cabbie really go to town on a cyclist. I mean, but
I've seen that clip. That lady was horrible. It was, it was just not pleasant at all. She was abusing him.
I mean, there's been some very good documentaries made. BBC made a really good one a couple of years ago, you know, just taking in both accounts. There were parents of young cyclists who've been killed, truck drivers who have footage of the risks that cyclists do take on the street. And like you said, we do see it happening all the time. Who would you say is generally at fault?
Jeremy Vine in that clip was following the law. it says when there's cars parked on both sides and there's only a bit of room to get down, you cycle in the middle. You can't cycle
You
on the
couldn't
side.
cycle anywhere
And I know
else.
those
Yeah.
streets because I used to live at Wright's Lane in Kensington,
Right.
which goes up to Kensington High Street from Cromwell Road. So I lived there for a year, and I know the area very well. And I know what those streets are like. That might have been Wright's Lane. I can't remember. It's not very wide, and he was in the right. And that driver he was cycling fairly fast. She was being impatient. She was just
She was abusive.
what I would call a coked up driver and there's a lot of those drivers who are very abusive. I've been practically run down recently by drivers who don't give you the right of way when you're legally crossing a road, and they try and run you down and they swear at you and that sort of thing. But cyclists also in London, when near Waterloo Bridge, I used to go down to the National Film Theatre, and there's this thing where The Lion King was playing. You go by there's a cycle path, and I tell you, some of those cyclists go right by and try and run people down. It seems to me anybody in a vehicle is becoming dangerous these days. Now, I think pedestrians should stick to where they stick, and they shouldn't be crossing roads in the wrong places, and they should be careful, because I know people get killed because a motorcycle guy I knew got killed because somebody was on a mobile phone not watching their way. But I've seen cyclists on Oxford Street go through red lights. The yuppies are the worst, and they think, again, I think too many drugs. I think they think they're like Superman.
Well, you're making big generalisations here, David, to be fair,
They
now, for the
behave
cycling
like that.
community. I know it's I mean, we can make jokes about it, but it's a difficult one, isn't it? Obviously, the cyclists are so much more fragile on the street.
Of course.
They're out there. We're out there driving weapons, basically. You know that. But is it just a case? We need cycling paths everywhere. Is that the only thing that's going to solve?
No. I think we need good manners. What do you
Yes,
think?
so
We need
that was good to
people to be
say.
courteous, because I even
Here we go
watch.
with David, old school Semple, like what we said.
Well, I tell you, even my friends who drive, and you know you're trying to get out the side of the road, and they won't stop for you and let you go. But my friends always give way to people. Drivers don't give way to drivers. We need manners on
We
the
all
road.
need to go back to like some kind of driving finishing school or something like this. There
Yes.
you go. Lovely. Thank you very much for that, guys. We're going to go for another break now. When I come back, we're going to have our interview guests, so don't go away.